and welcome to Live Life on Fire, the guide to live the successful life full of peace, joy, and fulfillment. An interview with Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, who is an attorney, CPA, and the author of this amazing new book. I'm Dr. Blades, and I will be facilitating our discussion today. First of all, thank you, Lynita, for the opportunity to talk to you about your incredible new book.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dr. Blades. It is a pleasure to be here today.
Well, it's an honor, and I'm really pleased that I had a chance to read the book ahead of its release. I was sharing with Lynita prior to us getting on set that the book was really eye-opening. It was challenging in some ways. I felt like my edges got snatched and she got me together. So we're going to get into this conversation so everybody else can learn more about what I've already experienced.
Sounds good.
So Lynita, behind your name, you have many titles: Esquire, CPA, CCLC. You're an author, a business coach, an attorney by trade. How would you say practicing law and being an accountant prepared you for this phase of your career?
So it is the interaction with people. At every point of our lives, we are encountering people who help us to develop into the best person that we can be. And prayerfully, we're doing the same for the other person. And my professions have really prepared me for this place in my life because I have met the people that were going to help me or shepherd me to this point, which is understanding that the carrot and stick mentality that we were raised with, particularly in the West, that success means stuff, that is not true. I spent most of my adult life chasing the things that people said equaled success. So cars, clothes, homes, money, etc. And I got a lot of accolades. And like you said, the alphabet soup behind my name. And I still was not joyful about my life. I had many health challenges, including stage 4 endometriosis, which led to a series of very complicated surgeries. And what came to me during my last one was, I have to stop this. I have to find the real key to what joy is in life. And that is how I got here. So I'm very thankful to my profession that, yes, I did get run into the ground, but I also ran into the arms of the Spirit. So I'm very grateful for that.
Wow, great intro. So your book is divided into 4 sections: silence, breathe, meditate, and flow. And then you end it off with be in awe, which I guess is kind of like your prologue. And within the book, each chapter has a very unique title. I thought you were so creative throughout. I felt like some of those chapters could even be a full standalone book. And it made me wonder, did you plan it that way, or did you write first and then you kind of went back and organized it into the sections?
So it was the second. I wrote first, and then I came back and organized into sections. My writing style is really the download from Holy Spirit. And a lot of times I'm driving or I'm walking, and I'll just have this feeling come over me. And these wonderful phones, these devices that we have, and I just speak exactly what is flowing into me. And when it stops, I stop. And so that's the chapter. And then I put it all together and I organize it according to the feeling. And then the chapters come from that. And I took a class years ago, and I really wish I remembered the name of the facilitator because he was amazing. I just remember his first name was Rob. And what Rob said is that you have to treat each chapter as if it is a book, because when people make the decision as to whether they are going to purchase and to pay attention, they are skimming your table of contents. And so they want to know that they are actually going to get something out of it. And so it's important to be mindful of that.
Well, you did an excellent job with that.
Thank you.
Now, it's hard for me not to try to stop on every chapter, but I've pulled something from almost every chapter.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to get to all of it.
Okay.
But in chapter 2, safety always overrides direction.
That's right.
You're not a safe person though, Lynita. So when I read that title, I wondered, where is she going with this? You haven't lived life in the safe lane. So tell us what you mean by safety always overrides direction.
Absolutely. So when we think of our lives are always built with the thought of, I have to have food, clothing, and shelter, right? And then once those things are satisfied, then we can move on to the next things, the things that whoever we are, success means to us, right? And so I have lived a very safe life when it comes to that. I've been very blessed to have a very supportive spouse, my husband, Brian Blackwell, over 23 years. And so even when it looked like I was being very daring, it was from a professional standpoint, right, but I always knew I had a roof over my head, food on my table, and clothes on my back. And so once you are able to get to a place where those basic necessities are done, then you can turn your mind onto your calling, your purpose. And for me, it came early, what I was sent here to do, which is to activate other people, hence to live life on fire, setting them on fire. But it took a lot for me to learn how to balance helping other people with helping myself. And even the step beyond that, which a lot of people don't get, because it took me a while, which was helping me first. Yes, because I always thought that I have to come last, that I have a servant's heart. I'm a 5th generation PK. And so I was always taught to serve. But when you're tired and you're trying to pour from an empty cup, that is where illness sets in. And it is very difficult to heal and to be good for anybody else if you're all run down and you're tired and you have a bad attitude. So that's where the safety overflows and overcomes direction comes from.
You also talk about fear. Fear is a huge theme throughout the book.
Yes.
And most people think that fear is what stops them from taking action. And a lot of times it does. But you talk about people actually acting out of fear.
Yes.
And making decisions out of fear. So I wanted you to expound on that.
Absolutely. And I have to say, when I talk about people, I'm people. Okay. The book is based on many of my life experiences. And even when I'm talking about other people, I'm talking about my reaction to them and the things that they're doing and the things that I've been able to see based on what Spirit has shown me. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we're dealing with others is that every experience that happens is for us. It's for them too, but it is for us. And so instead of looking at every experience as someone is trying to get me, someone is trying to take me down. And so those thoughts are coming from fear of being exposed, fear of not being good enough. Even when you have all of the stuff and think that you have arrived, as long as it's coming from a place of fear, it will never feel like it's good enough. And so it is important that we look at ourselves, look at our lives, look at what we have been given as far as our gifts, skills, and talents, and say, okay, how is this supposed to help me? And then how am I supposed to share that with others? It takes a while to get comfortable with asking those questions, Dr. Blades, because we think that we are selfish. But if we could just take a moment and break that word down, self, I would like people to think instead and think of soul. And then ish, take the literal root of that word, which is focus, become soul focused. Once you get to a place where you are soul focused, none of it, the fears, the anxieties, they flow away. I'm not saying they don't ever try to come back like an ocean, right? Coming back to the beach. But they flow out with enough time and enough space for you to get done what you need done. And then you'll be ready for the next challenge.
So speaking of being ready for the next challenge, being captivated by fear, either causing it to stall you or causing you to make decisions prematurely, because you talked about that in the book as well. You talk about all of us having these many talents and gifts.
Yes.
really as evidenced by yourself, by your many titles.
Thank you.
I've had a career change as well after spending a long time in the same field. And we're seeing that with a lot of people now since the pandemic hit. We see people taking a pivot and going into something new. But you talk about, instead of trying to address everything at the same time, trying to do everything at the same time, I think your exact words is multitasking is for suckers.
That's right. That's right.
You talk about us rotating our intellectual crops. Lynita, tell us why that's important.
Absolutely. So in the book, I talk about how we are taught to multitask. And a lot of jobs, you'll see in the description, if you can't do that, then this is not the place for you. If you think about every time you multitask, you feel stressed, feel anxious. Sometimes you make mistakes, silly mistakes that you never would have if you had just been able to take your time and do one thing at a time. And I talk about the fact that for all of us, we're given different things that we do well, even if it is not a service or a product. Sometimes it's just sitting with someone and being peace while they're in their storm, right? If we're trying to be peace while someone else is in their storm and checking our email and trying to check voicemail and trying to play a game, well, then we didn't do that first thing very well because you're not sitting still and being peaceful. When we're multitasking like that, we're depleting ourselves quickly. And if we're not taking the time to do one thing at a time, then we don't get the opportunity to rejuvenate. Without that rejuvenation, without that feeling of, okay, I can rest, I feel better, now I can be who I need to be for myself and for everyone else, then eventually you get burned out. That burnout leads to the health challenges. The endometriosis, that was me, the hair breaking off, the skin deteriorating, my nails splitting. I remember one time I was so exhausted from trying to be everything to everybody that literally my daughter, who at that time was 6 years old, found me passed out on the floor, exhausted. And she came and instead of me tucking her in, I was being tucked in. She put a pillow under my head and a blanket over my body and kissed my forehead goodnight. And that's when I knew this is unsustainable. Something has to give. And it's got to be me in the way that I go through life.
What pushback did you get from people around you? I'm sure very well-meaning, because you had achieved this height of becoming an attorney and doing so many things that are perceived to be at the highest level of professionalism. So what pushback did you get when you told people, I'm going to go a different route with my career?
So it's interesting you asked that, because at the time when that happened, I also had my media company, Bold Favor Media Group, which published up to 5 magazines at one time. We had an award-winning award show, and we were also covering red carpets where we were being invited. We had finally gotten to the place where we weren't chasing people down, including the Soul Train Music Awards. And I was looking at my life because I had my law firm. I still had my accounting firm. We had the media company, and Leading Through Living was not just publishing my books at that time. It's publishing other authors. We had 8 bestsellers at the time. And I was like exhausted. It was a lot of fun, and people invited me everywhere, and I was highly respected, and I love that. But when I told them that I could not do all of that, people fell away. People unfriended me on social media, stopped following. When I would call them and ask them for projects, and I never asked anyone to work for free. I was paying. They were very cold. And at first it was very hurtful. But Dr. Blaze, what Spirit revealed to me was those people had served their purpose in my life, and it was time for them to go. So I got over my anger and my hurt, and I was able to come from a place of gratitude, saying, thank you for serving your purpose in my life. And I pray I did the same for yours. And this is where we leave this. Now, it took a while to get there.
Yes.
I'm not going to make it seem like it happened overnight. It did not. But it happened in the appointed time that it was supposed to. So when I look back, I feel no bitterness and no anger toward those people. But it was hard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything different. It was very hard.
So in the latter part of the book, you talk a lot about how people deal with grief. And you mentioned death specifically. You even mentioned grieving ended relationships.
Yes.
What was your grieving period like when you saw these people who had been a part of prior success kind of drop out of the picture?
I cried a lot. I would go on long walks, and I didn't realize they were that long until my mother said, "So you took another tour of Hoover." We were living in Alabama at the time. I was like, "Mom, I wasn't going that long." She said, "You've been going 3 hours." And I was like, "Really?" But yes. But those were times that I needed, because I was fellowshipping with the Holy Spirit, and he was talking to me and downloading into me and healing my heart. See, that's one of the things that we don't do. We don't allow ourselves space and time to grieve.
We don't.
We don't. And people will tell you, well-meaning, who love you, "Oh, just get back into the swing of things. Like if a relationship ends, start dating. If a job ends, just get a better job."
Right.
But those things serve a purpose in our lives too. And if we honor that pain, Evangelist Stephanie Davenport has an excellent book called Purpose in Your Pain. And she talks about the importance of honoring pain in your life, that everything is for the good of those who love the Lord, and it's called to his purpose. And when we look at those things as something good for us, then we can see the little jewels in them. Now, I'm not going to say that those people who did those things had that in mind, that, "Oh, I'm doing this to serve her." Right. No. Some of them, they were very mean, and it was intentional. And if you talk to them today, they are not apologetic about it. They are unapologetic
or even
about
aware. Some people are completely
it.
unaware.
Totally. But it doesn't change the fact that it was for your good.
Right.
So that's what it was.
Happiness is temporary and joy is eternal.
Yes.
So you talk about happiness being an external thing and it being stimulated by the things around us.
Yes.
But joy is something that happens within.
Yes.
A lot of people have a hard time differentiating, as you indicated yourself as being people. I have once been people when it comes to the happiness versus joy. But what can you say to anyone who's watching about how they will know when it's happiness versus when it is joy?
Absolutely. So the difference between happiness and joy for me is that happiness is the laugh in that moment.
Lynita, you give so many anecdotes and stories and side notes in the book.
Now, I'm from the South, girl. That's what we do.
That is
Everything
exactly
has a
what
story.
we do in the South. I placed you in Alabama, but you told me you have lived in Alabama as an adult, but you grew up in Miami.
Yes, that's right.
I love the one story you write about the flower that you noticed outside of your home that would bloom early.
Yes.
Every year. And I wanted you to share the significance of that flower blooming early.
Absolutely. So my mother has a green thumb. She is famous for it in our family. It skipped over me. I no longer say I have a black thumb, maybe a light brown. Okay. And so she planted all these flowers in our home when we purchased it 22 years ago now. And every year, without fail, there is this little tulip that sprouts before everybody else in the fall spring. And so anybody who has been in Georgia during the spring knows that there's this period of time where we get this like snap of cold. And then it goes back to being normal. And then spring comes for real. Well, the little tulip comes in and I see it and I'm like, this is the sign that something good is to come. That even though things are hard right now and that we're going to go through another period, that after that, real spring is coming. And I know the little guy just does what it's going to do.
Yes.
It's an early riser. It's
Yeah.
an early bloomer. But for me, it's a sign that no matter what is going on in life, that something else is coming, something better, something more loving, more joyful, more fulfilling. And I have needed that in my life. It has not been an easy road. And although I wouldn't change it, I have worked really hard to ensure that my daughter learns from my mistakes and lives a better life. I don't force her to do all these activities. If she does not want to as a teenager, her no is firm. It's no. I don't have her in a whole bunch of activities. I see some of my friends on social media whose kids are in at least 3 different sports and they're working and they're like, look at her go. And I'm like, look at her stress. Because I was that kid and I didn't know that that's not the way to live. I thought as long as you hear that applause and good job, then okay, then this is what happens. But that never stops because that activity that you did in high school to get those accolades, then you get into college and you doing even more to get more accolades. And then you get that job and more accolades. It never, ever stops. You really have to work to reset your whole life. And that old life sometimes tries to pull you back in.
Yes.
Because it's like addiction. It never really stops.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day I have to reaffirm to myself, no, this is normal. This is good for us.
Yes.
And it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Because action creates attraction.
I like
the
that.
more opportunities
Yes.
you get, the more opportunities you get.
Yes.
And you really have to learn how to sift through which ones are going to be the highest yield.
Yes.
For the least amount of stress.
Yes.
And does it make sense? Is it practical for me?
Yes.
So I like that. Now, there are a couple of things I want to explore a little more deeply, but I'm going to start with our intelligence quotient.
Yes.
Which most of us have at least heard of, even if we don't know our own IQ. I don't know mine. I've never taken an IQ test because I think my feelings would be hurt if I did. I would just rather go with the intelligence that I know I'm working with and not put a value on it. But you talk about all these other quotients.
Yes.
That some of them I didn't realize that they were actual quotients.
Yes.
So can you break those down for us?
Absolutely. So as you stated, IQ, most of us are aware of that one. So that's the book knowledge. That's what you learn in school, how well you absorb information, right? And then there's the emotional quotient or EQ. And that is how well you deal with people and honestly yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's SQ, the spiritual quotient. That is your understanding and how you deal with the fact that there is something outside of you that is greater than you to whom we are all accountable. Yes. Now, whether you call that entity God or not, you understand that there is something bigger than you out there. And then what I like to call the aggregate is all of those quotients combined. And if you notice that we have the 3 that combine into one, that is modeled after the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and then there's the one that is God, right? And then outside of that, how you utilize that knowledge, there is the intuitive quotient. So this is beyond anything you can taste, touch, or smell. This is how you start living your life in awe. This is when you hear the whisper telling you to turn left, even though you know you need to make a right and you never, and you turn left and you understand why when you're looking back in your rearview mirror, because there's an accident that just happened that you missed. This is when you have this feeling to call someone and they are just breaking down and all they needed was to hear your voice. This is when you utilizing your skills, gift, and talents at your job and someone wants to start a business and you don't even know it and you just tell them, you should go ahead and do that. And they look at you and say, what? And you can tell them that business. And these are all things that have happened to me. And the more that I have embraced each quotient, particularly the last one, the intuitive quotient, the more that I can look and feel and believe that I do an even better job for my clients, whether it's my coaching clients, my legal clients, or me, my client, me. We look outside ourselves all the time, but the truth is, Dr. Blades, everything that we have ever wanted is within.
So you led me right into a topic that I really wanted to spend some time on. As we've been sitting here today, I've heard you talk about God.
Yes.
You've referenced the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
You've referenced spirit.
Yes.
In general.
Yes.
Okay. Also in the book, you say all thoughts are energy, and energy in and of itself is neither good nor bad.
That's right.
So you talk about this spiritual intelligence, this intuitive intelligence, but you also talk about God, and in some places you mention God as a him or her. You have a really broad way of thinking about that power that is greater than us. So my question for you is centered around the fact that many people don't believe that you can talk about energy and God.
That's true.
In the same reference, but you use words like vibration, guidance.
Yes.
You use candles. You have an altar where you meditate and pray. How do you balance that for people who question the existence of a universal power in existence with God, as we have always been taught to know him or her?
Absolutely. So the easy answer is that God is. God is everything. And our understanding of the entity that is God is what we have been taught and what can be contained in this human body, which is limited. God is limitless. So that's beyond unlimited. Everything that we have, everything we will ever have comes from God. So that means God has no gender because gender comes from God. God has all energy because energy comes from God. Nothing is good or bad because that is a human application. And it is only good or bad because of the way that it is used. One thing that I have seen in these various debates with politicians with gun rights and gun violence, there are countries all around the world that have the same laws or similar laws that we have with you can own a firearm, but do not have the same level of violence.
Correct.
And it is because their mindset toward violence is different. So it is not the gun that causes the problem. It is the person holding the gun, but it's deeper than that. It is the mindset of the person holding the gun. When I look at the fact that Jesus's most ardent directive was to love one another as he has loved us, I look at that and I say to myself, then the best way for me to love you is to love you as you are, without judgment. Now, do I always succeed? No, I'm a human and I am still having a human experience. But if I seriously want to love you as you are with all your faults, and I'm putting that in quotes because again, that's judgment, right? And it's a judgment for Lynita, who has lived these 46 years in certain places, interacting with certain people, and understanding that some other person, female, 46, who grew up in, let's say, South Korea, would have a very different set of judgments and thoughts. I have to look at that and say that I'm doing the best I can with what I have and what I know. And so that's how I would say that.
So there is this idea of keep going, don't quit, push through, which I believe is different from perseverance and resilience. And you talk about in the book there being a time where quitting is the appropriate and best option.
Absolutely.
Lynita, when is it time and okay, mandatory for us to quit?
When you know that you have done everything that you're supposed to do, it's time to go. Now, that is hard for us because we have been taught that until the project is done, until whatever has been accomplished, then it's done. The motto for my School of Business at Florida A&M University that was founded by the late Dean Sybil Mobley was, no excuse is acceptable, no amount of effort is adequate until it is effective, which served me very well until it didn't. And so once you get to the place where your health is failing, you are no longer communing with spirit, you are constantly at odds with the people you love and who love you and who you know have your best interests at heart. When you can't even stand and do the things that you love and once brought great joy to your heart, it's time to take a real hard look at what you're doing, and it's probably time to go.
You talk about the power of consistency. Why do you think it's so hard for people to be consistent with their self-care or the things that they like doing, things that are good for them, when they can easily be consistent when it comes to their career or their business or other things, I guess, that are more external?
Because it's external. Most of us have to serve out. And then whatever is left, you can bring in. You talk about self-care. When we hear self, our mind, we hear is selfish. But if we say soul care, and we know that's within, now that's a different thing. We're not talking about facials and bubble baths. Right? We're talking about time to meditate and to pray. Sri Ravi Shankar, who founded the Art of Living Foundation in Bangalore, says that meditation is listening to God and praying is talking to God. My grandmother used to say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should do twice as much listening as you do talking. So if we're not able to do those things that bring us into alignment with God, then that is a problem. And it manifests in every area of our lives. See, we think that we're able to pack away who we are at home and go to work and that nobody sees that. It's a lie. We think that nobody knows that we're in trouble. Now, they may not be able to put their finger on the fact that it's your husband that's ill or your child that's acting out, but they know that there's something wrong because you are exhibiting behaviors that say that. Because you're Mr. or Mrs. Mouthpiece. Yes, there you go.
Y'all have to read the book to know who Mr. Mouthpiece is.
That's exactly right. And I never got the chance to see Mouthpiece afterwards to know what it was in his life that was making him show up at work that way. But there was definitely something.
It was something.
Yes.
Another thing that I really, really love from the book is getting into our calling zone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it really connects well to what you were saying about taking the time to turn over our talents and to give our talents an opportunity to become the topsoil and paying attention to the things that we do well. Do we all have a calling zone?
Absolutely. It's just that many of us run from it because we look at that as being selfish too. It is so much easier to support somebody else's dream, to be there for them, especially as women, because a good mom supports her kids. I look at my mother and I think about all that she put to the side for me and my sister. The fact that she was working on her master's degree when she found out she was pregnant with me, and she did not have the opportunity to go back because after I turned 2, she delivered my sister. And then once my sister turned 2, my parents got divorced. So she had to work full time. And that full time wound up being at night so that she could be available to us during the day if we got sick. And I went through a period when I was in elementary school, I was having horrible headaches. They thought I had a brain tumor. And so she sacrificed her health because working at night, you tend to eat more. And so she gained a lot of weight. She sacrificed a good night's rest, raising 2 daughters. She sacrificed her dreams, getting her master's and moving up in administration. And it was not until we were in high school that she finally got back on track to the things that she wanted to do. But the world tells you that you're a great mom when you do those things. And that those mothers who try to do it concurrently, well, there's something wrong with that. And I disagree, because your children do what they see, not what you say.
Absolutely.
And so if they see you stuffing yourself away like that and not going to school at the same time they are, and y'all doing your homework together at the table, and they're going to do that too. Or what a lot of people are doing, these children, Gen Z, they're not having kids at all. And they will tell you that. I'm not having children.
Right.
I'm not getting married. And you're looking at these birth rates like, wait a minute, you got to fund my Social Security. You know? So we do a serious disservice to not just ourselves, but to the next generation as well, by not continuing to live and to improve and to love ourselves.
I'm going to read this direct quote from the book.
Okay.
Sometimes we believe that our work is inconsequential because it did not move mountains, but every blade of grass, every pebble comprises the mountain that has to be moved. So how do we measure impact when it's not something big that everybody can see right away?
Dr. Blades, if we measured our impact on the number of people that we touched instead of how deep it was, then the people, the teachers, the rabbis who seeded into Jesus would feel that their lives were inconsequential. And Yeshua has touched more lives in the past 2,000 years than I would probably say any man or woman who has lived. When I talk about being a purpose and on mission, that's what I'm talking about. The person who matters right now is the person sitting across from me right this moment. And that is Dr. Blades. The people who see this interview, I pray that you are blessed and you get what you are supposed to get from here. But my focus has to be right here, right now. We are taught to always live in the present, always plan on the next thing. What about right now?
Yes.
And that's why we wind up stressed out and feeling like we are nothing, and that we are inconsequential to the grand scheme of things. And it is just not true. That is a bold-faced lie. And social media will have you believing that. And it is heartbreaking to see people who are depressed after just scrolling through and seeing the best parts of their friends' lives. Because that's what people
that
post.
may not even really be a part of their life.
Oh, see, I wasn't going to go there, but
it may not even be anything that's currently happening in their lives.
That's exactly
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
In the final chapter of the book, Make the Call, you talk about using technology as a convenience, as a shield, even as an excuse for us not to make contact with people. Why is it still important in 2022 to send handwritten thank you notes and to pick up the phone and call people?
Dr. Blaze, there are just some things that no matter how technologically advanced we become, will not overcome the value of the human touch. A text is nice. A handwritten letter is better. A call is great, but coming and sitting with somebody is better. There is a feeling, a warmth, an energy, whatever word you want to call, a connection that happens when we use our hand and touch something that had or has life, like paper. That was once wood. And then it goes to another person who then touches it. They can feel that. When you're hearing my voice, you hear the caring. You hear the fact that I want to know more about what's going on with you. When I'm sitting here across from you, you can feel the warmth. You can feel the vibration. You know how to respond. And it's not just about facial expression. It's just how you feel when you're with someone.
Lynita, I don't know if you've ever experienced when you've been on vacation and you meet people from all over, folks that you normally wouldn't be around in your daily life.
Yes.
You can get together, you can talk about anything, you can have a good time, and you really connect with those people.
Yes.
And then when you leave and you go back into your own world and you see people that may look like the ones you saw on vacation, but you don't make that connection in your daily life. Is it something about being in that particular kind of space that makes us all connect regardless of those differences?
Yes, because vacation is the place where you take off the mask and the suit and you leave that where it is. And now you can just relax and be. You just be. You have no expectations of yourself or others. And you're able to connect with just that person, not with the profession, not Dr. Blaze and Attorney Blackwell. It's Marquita and Lynita.
Yes. I think the best way to close us out is with words from the book's dedication, which was written to Lynita's daughter.
Yes.
There is more to life than work. And for anyone who is courageous enough to demand that life produces the more abundantly and according to his and her skills, gifts, and talents over and over again until it leads to peace, joy, and fulfillment. Thank you so much, Lynita, for the opportunity to talk to you about this amazing book. I hope that everyone has an opportunity to get the book, read it, meet you in person.
Thank you.
Experience the grace and the joy that I had the pleasure of sitting with today. Anything you want to share with our audience before we close out?
Absolutely. This book was written in love. And so when I'm talking about living a life on fire, it is not to burn your life down so that it's desolate, but rather so that you remove the things that are holding you back from living a life of peace, joy, and fulfillment, from really being grateful and thankful for what you have and knowing that there is more, but it's going to start in this moment right here, right now, of peace, love, and joy.
Thank you all again. Live life on fire.